Children of a Karen, what is it like? My mom is a reformed Karen. When I was a kid, she used to treat people in customer service like trash. When I was a teenager and in customer service positions, it finally dawned on her what a terrible human being she was being. She's turned around and been great ever since. I'm proud of her to recognize her faults and fix them. My mom is somewhat of a Karen, mostly in regards to restaurants, and I have an anxiety disorder. It's a combination made in hell. My sister is a Karen in recovery, and her teenage kids are mortified by her. They had a Karen intervention with her a few months ago, and pointed out that about 1 out of every 3 visits to a restaurant results in a meal or a drink sent back, and about 1 in 10 results in a conversation with a manager. Unresolved complaints over the phone practically have a pre-written script. This is unacceptable. Poor customer service, etc. She's trying to be more self-aware because she now recognizes that not only can her behavior be embarrassing, but she's a Karen caricature. If someone described the typical Karen by looks, age, race, tone of voice, social standing, they would be describing her to a T. Sure, it's Karen shaming, but we're living in a society here. Frankly, it's embarrassing. You have to sit there while they shriek at a manager and cause a big scene. If you try to chime in, you get yelled at. Then they are in a bad mood the rest of the day. I've sat through hour-long debates with managers over 11 cents disparity on a bill. Everyone is looking at you and you are just kind of trapped there. When my siblings and I were younger, she was great. But she's become more insufferable as she's gotten older. She has 2 voices. A talking to us voice and a talking to other people voice. Her other people voice is very serial killer-like. She tells us not to shop at certain stores or stay at certain types of hotels when we travel because they are ghetto. She is never ever wrong. For anything. Even when I tear an argument of hers to shreds, she makes me apologize. I've never received an apology from her in my life. Even when she's screamed in my face for absolutely no reason. She's not exactly the let me speak to your manager type. But she will leave places crappy reviews on Google or Facebook if she doesn't like the service. Speaking of which, she is the queen of Facebook. The first couple months of the pandemic she wouldn't stop posting about how we all need to go back to living. Now that the protests have started, she's been ranting about how she didn't sit in the house for 2 months for it to be ruined by protesters. I've had to learn to just ignore it and be thankful I don't live with her anymore. It may also be worth mentioning my mom is a second-generation Karen. My grandma is the literal textbook definition of Karen. She's almost 80 years old and I still can't go to restaurants with her because I never know what she's going to say or do. My generation's Karen seems to be my brother. However, my fiancé already knows that if I ever start showing any traits of Karen, then he is to immediately put me out of my misery. My parents are lovely people on the whole, but they are unbelievably entitled when they go to restaurants. I spoke up about it every time and they'd brush it off. Such behaviors include when there is a clear way to be seated situation. They'll just walk in and sit down at any table, even if it's unbussed. They will get multiple drinks, beer, soda, water with lemon, coffee, really anything refillable. Tip poorly. Ask questions the normal waiter doesn't have the answers to, like what's the rent here or what's the history of the building. I stopped going to restaurants with them a couple years ago. Even a free meal isn't worth the frustration. My grandma is banned from most stores in 3 counties. Before my hometown turned into a regular suburb, it was a semi-rural small town. In those times I could bring up her name and strangers would cringe. She wasn't a regular Karen though. She's an unapologetic white supremacist. So, I don't blame them. We haven't spoken with her in a decade or so. I have no idea who is worse between my father, my mother, my oldest sister and my older sister. Dad will belittle anyone who crosses him, demanding to speak to managers, threatening litigation, calls to authorities, etc. He is always concerned that somebody is out to get him and is extremely cautious of scammers. Door-to-door solicitors or people calling are in for a treat if they are sorry enough to get him. Customer representatives over the phone have no idea how to manage him. He is surprisingly very nice when things are going smooth though. Mom is a textbook restaurant Karen. She is fortunately nice about it, but will request changes, comments on everything, etc. But she is impossible to please. I get it when I do anything for her. Oldest sister has my dad's temper and my mom's demands, without either of their niceness. Plus she is well married, so she is insanely entitled. Older sister is just temper. Will just yell at people. They are my family and I love them. But I hate it when I see any of their awful ways in me. Hopefully Karen shaming will get them soon and they understand the wrong of their ways. I have many patients who are children and their Karen mothers are probably the worst part of my job. I feel bad for the kids and husband the most, to be honest. I am constantly wondering if the next white woman to go viral for calling the police on an unsuspecting black person will be my mother. My mom will always exaggerate everything. She's gotta keep up with her friends while they complain about how their kids are doing drugs, shoplifting, sneaking out. My mom talks about how I said the word crap and makes it seem like I cussed out an adult right before murdering them. I'm almost an adult and I'm not allowed to swear. And yes, the child swear words count too. Any word that can be used as an insult counts. Lots of nodding along and desperately searching for an opportunity to make a joke that lightens the mood or changes the subject. Very rarely am I asked outright for my thoughts, and when I am, I make an absurd joke to make it clear I have no interest in discussing it. She asked me how I voted once, so I said I was confused by the ballots, so I just checked everything off. That's what I was supposed to do, right? I also don't make a lot of eye contact during those topics. And especially if I'm not the only one there, I kind of distance myself a little. Engage with my nieces or the dog or something until I hear the topic has changed. I grew up in Texas, but my parents are originally from Tennessee. When we were visiting Tennessee once, she remarked about how few Tennessee state flags were flown compared to the number that you see in Texas. So she thought they could use a little more state pride. She wrote letters to a few congressmen and I think even the governor's office to tell them to fly more flags. The next time we visited, she'd point out every Tennessee flag we saw. Obviously you couldn't prove it was because of her. But admittedly there were a lot more that trip. TLDR, my mom asked to speak with the manager of a whole state and got her way. If I'm in a store or restaurant and I witness a Karening, is there anything I can do to help? Seems like any intervention would only raise her careness. Although I don't mind taking some heat off a poor worker. Any ideas? Real or hilarious? My mom once had some strong Karen tendencies. But she started channeling that Karen energy into activism, community service, and advocating for people. And it morphed into assertiveness and tenacity rather than rudeness. Honestly, she's an inspiration to me. Because she took what was an issue for her and turned it into something positive that helps others. My mom was actually named Karen. Her hair is the cut of actual Mim Karen. Living with her was hell. She is no longer in my life. I have so many crazy horror stories I doubt many would believe me. She was a radiologist, so she has money to top it all off. It was awful. So bad my sister and I convenienced my very Catholic father to divorce her. He was an attorney and she managed to get her doctor pals to label her disabled, so my father, whom earned much less than her, had to pay her $270,000 for the privilege. The final straw for me was she only paid any attention to my daughter. When we had my son, she wanted nothing to do with him. Infuriating. Both my mom and dad are awful to shop assistants. Despite the fact that I worked in the sector for 20 years. Neither of my parents read shelf signage properly. But if there's a price discrepancy, it's always the fault of the cashier, and they're very fond of the "you're not doing your job properly" argument. Even if it's a penny difference, they'll kick off. I've seen my mom reduce people to tears before. Mom also uses her disability to her advantage and will scream for the manager. Throw the "it's because I'm disabled" card around and will then be nice as anything when the manager appears. They both shoplift too and see nothing wrong with it. I'm more than happy to help my parents with their shopping, but I have to walk away once they go to pay because it's so exhausting. My mom will always want to see the manager for whatever slight thing. Once she waited in line at the service desk for something like half an hour because she thought she was overcharged a few cents for 2 bottles of dish liquid that was on sale. Then she gets up there to complain and she discovers that she was actually undercharged quite a bit. So she complained about not paying enough and the manager said he would have to write up the cashier for the undercharge, but she can have the items. Like, who wastes that much of their life on this stuff? She picked me up from the airport when I was coming back from a trip to apply to graduate school and she accidentally parked in the overnight lot. When she went through the gate, the attendant said $20. She blew up and threw an unholy fit. The entire car was shaking. She was going to get them fired somehow. I was just trying not make eye contact as I was really embarrassed by this. I am bound for graduate school and my white trashed mother is screaming at parking lot attendants because she parked in the wrong lot. The attendants finally just raised the gate and she gunned it out of the lot. And to this day she brings up this story as if it was a win. My sister's is a Karen. So entitled and self-obsessed. She's never not sent a meal back at a restaurant. I figure she's eaten a lot of spit. It's like having a boss more than a mom. A boss who micromanages you from sweeping the floor to eating your pasta. A boss who complains non-stop about anything and everything. A boss who always says bad things to the CEO, dad, behind his back. She never runs out of things to ask you to do. It's a torture. I don't even want to talk to her or stay in the same room with her. Thankfully I was able to leave home now. We still fight when I come to visit my parents, but it's seldom now cause I don't visit them much. My mom represents the complete opposite of a Karen besides being named Karen. TBH, the stereotype gets a bit annoying because she really is a reasonable and understanding person. Love my mama. My stepmom is a certified Karen. Honestly, it is mortifying to go anywhere in public with her. We went to Disney last year and she made this huge fuss that we weren't staying at the freaking Ritz-Carlton. Then she loudly complained to the dining cast members at Pop Century, what a dump/s, when they didn't cook her specialty burger before everyone else's order. The kicker is that we, my husband and I, footed the bill for a lot of their vacation. But she never once said thank you. My real mom died of cancer and never would have been such a Karen. My mom isn't really a full-on Karen. But if she is very hungry, she gets hangry to a new level. She'll get pissed cause she can't decide what to order, then take it out on the waiters. They get a pissy attitude from my mom and I feel so bad. I want to apologize to them, but then again that would make my mom mad at me. Also, when she is in public she'll randomly stare at people and be like, does she not own a hairbrush? Or some other comment like that. It's extremely embarrassing and I want to hide under a rock whenever she does it. I've started telling her to stop, but then she gets upset with me like, what, they can't hear me? But I clearly saw them look at you when you said it. Ugh. Any advice?